And let me use this chart to explain this point. This is the price of crude oil. I'm going to show you the price of crude oil in terms of 4 different currencies. And this, again, is a base 100 analysis. I'm assuming that the price of crude oil is 100 in January of 1950, and then I'm going to show what's happened to the price of crude oil based on actual real results over that period of time, and translated into this base 100 analysis. So this is the British pound price of crude oil. If it was 100 back in January 1950, last summer it was 7,800. In other words, a 78-fold increase in the price of crude oil in terms of the British pound. And even with the big collapse in crude oil during the deleveraging after the Lehman Brothers collapse, we still see the price of crude oil in British pound terms about 4,800, or 47 or 48 times what the price of crude oil was in British pound terms back at the beginning of this 1950. Now, the second currency I'm showing here is the US dollar. Now, the price of crude oil is also rising in terms of US dollars. As we can see, the green line is much higher now than it was back in 1950. But there's another point that we can make by comparing the dollar price of crude oil to the British pound price of crude oil. And what we're saying is that as bad as the dollar has been managed over this period of time, the British pound is even worse. In other words, the dollar has lost a lot of purchasing power because of inflation and debasement and other things that have destroyed the purchasing power of the currency, but the British pound has been even worse than the US dollar. Now let's look at what the euro has done. Now this is the euro going back to 2000 and the Deutschmark prior to 2000 going back to 1950. It is by far much better than the US dollar or the British pound. The ability or the commitment of the Bundesbank and to the ECB, but I think lesser extent in the ECB than the commitment was held at the Bundesbank. You know, the aim has been to preserve the purchasing power of the currency. And over this period of time, the Deutschmark and the euro has been much better than either the US dollar or the British pound. But I'm going to show you the fourth currency now. And look very, very closely at the bottom of the chart. This is the price of crude oil in terms of gold. Now, the price of crude oil in terms of gold has not really risen at all. In other words, an ounce of gold today buys the same amount of crude oil it did in the 1970s, in the 1960s, in the 1950s.